The invitation that changed everything. A CEO's unexpected Valentine's Day dinner. Imagine a lonely CEO, adrift in his luxurious but empty world, facing yet another solitary Valentine's Day. Then, a small girl, no older than 7, approaches him in a snow-dusted park, her bright eyes fixed on him. "Will you have dinner with us?" she asks, a simple question that shatters his carefully constructed solitude and sets in motion a chain of events he could never have predicted. What happens when a child's innocent invitation sparks a profound transformation, leading a man of immense wealth to discover the true meaning of family? This is a story about vulnerability, unexpected connections, and how a shared meal can bridge worlds. A cold heart, a warm invitation. Which David Miller looked up from his phone, which he had been staring at blankly. Snow fell softly over Central Park, and this girl, about 7 years old, looked at him with a smile he hadn't seen in years. She wore a green pom-pom hat and mismatched gloves. "Sophia, don't bother the gentleman." A female voice approached quickly. A young woman appeared behind the girl, with strands of brown hair escaping from her scarf. "I'm sorry, my daughter doesn't understand that you don't talk to strangers." David studied the woman. She had paint stains on her fingers, and a look he recognized. The look of someone who had worked hard for every dollar earned. "No problem at all." David straightened up, shaking the snow from his expensive coat. "It's been a long time since anyone invited me to dinner." Sophia smiled wider. "Mommy made cookies for Valentine's Day. She says they're really good, but I think they're a little burnt." "Sophia!" Her mother blushed. "They're not burnt. Well, only the bottoms." Sophia shrugged. "But the tops are perfect." David found himself smiling for the first time in weeks. This child spoke with an honesty he had forgotten existed. "What's your name?" Sophia asked. "David. I'm Sophia, and that's my mommy Maria. We live above the place where she paints huge murals. Do you know what murals are?" "Yes, I know what murals are." Maria took her daughter's hand. "Let's go, Sophia. The gentleman has things to do." But David had nothing to do. His luxurious apartment awaited him, empty, as always. Dinner would be takeout, eaten alone in front of the TV. Another night just like the hundreds of previous nights. "Is the invitation still open?" he asked before he could stop himself. Sophia clapped. "Yes, Mommy, right?" Maria looked at him carefully. David could see the struggle in her eyes. It was obvious she didn't have much money, but it was also obvious that she had raised a daughter who saw a lonely man and wanted to help. "Of course," she finally said, "but it's nothing fancy." "Better," David said. "It's been a long time since I've eaten anything that wasn't fancy." They walked through the snow-covered streets. Sophia chatted about her teacher, about a boy named Kevin who pulled her hair, about how her mom painted the most beautiful murals in the world. Maria walked in silence, glancing occasionally at David. "What do you do?" Maria asked, when Sophia was distracted watching a dog. "Computers." David didn't want to go into detail. "And you?" "I'm an artist. I paint murals when there's work, and I clean offices when there isn't." The honesty of her answer struck him. When was the last time someone had given him such a direct answer about their life? They arrived at an old building in the Lower East Side. Maria opened a door next to a grocery store. "It's upstairs," she said. "It's 2 floors. Downstairs I have my studio. Upstairs we live." The studio was full of colors. Half-finished murals covered the walls. Paint cans were stacked in the corners. The air smelled of fresh paint and something else. Life. Creativity. Passion. "Look!" Sophia pointed to a mural of a father holding his daughter. "Mommy says all daddies should hold their daughters like that." David stopped in front of the mural. Something in his chest tightened. His own father had held him like that once, before disappearing from his life forever. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "Do you have children?" Sophia asked. "No. A wife? No. A dog? No. Sophia frowned. What do you have then? David laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. Money. Oh, how boring, Sophia said. Money doesn't hug you. Maria went upstairs, but David stayed looking at the mural. Sophia's words were exactly what his grandmother used to say. Money doesn't hug you, son. Are you coming? Sophia called from upstairs. Dinner's getting cold. The apartment was small, but warm. The table was set for two, but Maria quickly added a third place. Dinner was simple. Chicken stew, beans, warm tortillas, and Sophia's cookies, which were indeed a little burnt on the bottom. It was the best dinner David had had in years. Can you come next week? Sophia asked when David was getting ready to leave. Sophia, Maria began. I'd love to, David said, surprising himself. Maria handed him a container with leftovers. Thank you, she said, for being kind to her. Thank you, David responded, for reminding me what it means to be human. As he walked back to his apartment, David carried more than just dinner leftovers. He carried something he had forgotten existed. Hope. What do you think is the significance of Sophia's innocent observation, money doesn't hug you, for David? How does this first dinner challenge David's perception of success and happiness? Share your insights in the comments. Shared roots. Unspoken connections. 3 weeks later, David walked the familiar streets towards Maria's apartment. It was no longer a one-time invitation. It had become something he looked forward to all week. David! Sophia ran towards him as he climbed the stairs. Mommy's making tamales! The aroma filled the entire building. David smiled. It had been 15 years since he had smelled homemade tamales. It smells like my grandmother used to make, he said, as he entered the kitchen. Maria looked up from the stove, her hair pulled back, and her cheeks flushed from the steam. Your grandmother made tamales? She asked. She was Salvadoran. She died when I was 20. David took off his coat. She made the best tamales in all of Queens. You're Salvadoran. Maria put down her spoon. I thought you were, I don't know, American. I'm both. David shrugged. Or neither. I'm not sure anymore. Sophia tugged his sleeve. Can you teach me words in Salvadoran? It's called Spanish, sweetie, Maria said. And I already teach you Spanish. But David's Spanish is different, Sophia insisted. It sounds like my grandmother from Mexico, but also different. David knelt to Sophia's level. Do you want me to teach you something nice my grandmother used to tell me? Sophia nodded enthusiastically. Sos la luz de mis ojos, chipota, David said softly. What does chipota mean? It means little girl. In El Salvador, that's what we call girls like you. Sophia practiced the words, laughing when she didn't get them right. Maria watched them from the kitchen with an expression David couldn't decipher. During dinner, Maria told him more about her life. She had come to New York 5 years ago when Sophia was 2. Her ex-husband, Sophia's father, had promised to follow them from Mexico City, but he never arrived. Why did you leave Mexico? David asked. Maria served more tamales. I wanted Sophia to have more opportunities, and I always dreamed of my art reaching important galleries. New York is where big things happen. And your visa? David asked carefully. I have a work permit because of my artistic talent. Maria looked at him directly. It's all legal, if that worries you. It doesn't worry me. David raised his hands. I just wanted to understand. After dinner, while Sophia drew at the table, Maria showed David more of her work. She had folders full of photographs of murals she had painted all over the city. I painted this one at a school in the Bronx, she said, pointing to an image of children playing, and this one at a restaurant in Queens. David studied the photos. The work was incredible. The vibrant colors, the figures full of life, the stories each mural told. How did you learn to paint like that? My dad was a house painter. Maria smiled. When I was a little girl, he would let me help him on weekends. I started by painting plain walls, but I always wanted to add something more. Flowers, birds, smiling faces. And he let you? At first he'd get angry. He said I was ruining his work. But then he started to see that people paid more for walls that had my drawings. David turned the pages, seeing the evolution of Maria's work, from simple decorations to complex murals that told complete stories. How much do you charge for a large mural? Maria tensed. It depends on the size. Why? Just curious. David closed the folder. It's beautiful work. But Maria had noticed something in his tone. She knew him well enough to know that his questions weren't casual. David, what exactly do you do with computers? It was the question he had been avoiding. David looked towards where Sophia was still drawing, oblivious to the conversation. I own a software company. We make programs for other companies. You're the boss? Yes. Of how many people? David sighed. 250 employees. Maria fell silent. David could see the pieces fitting into place in her mind. His expensive coat, the leather shoes, the way he talked on the phone when he thought she wasn't listening. And why do you eat with us every Tuesday? The question cut straight to his heart. David looked around the small apartment, the cheap but well-kept furniture, Sophia's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the sofa that clearly also served as Maria's bed. Because here I feel like a person, he finally said. In my world, I'm just money with legs. Here, I'm David, who eats tamales and teaches Salvadoran Spanish to a girl who thinks dogs talk. Maria laughed softly. Dogs do talk. Adults just forget how to listen. Mommy? Sophia looked up from her drawing. Can David stay and watch a movie? Maria looked at David. If he wants to, I'd love to. They watched a Disney movie, the three of them huddled on the small sofa. Sophia fell asleep between David and Maria, her head on her mother's lap and her feet on David's legs. She's comfortable with you, Maria whispered. That's rare. She's usually shy with men. Because of her dad? She never really knew him. He left when she was 6 months old. He came back once when she was 2, but only to ask for money. David felt a surge of anger in his chest. How could someone abandon this family? Have you ever thought about going back to Mexico? Maria stroked Sophia's hair. Every day. But here, she can be whatever she wants to be. In Mexico City, for girls like her, options are limited. Girls like her? Intelligent? Dreamy? Who ask tough questions and don't accept easy answers. David looked at Sophia sleeping. Even asleep, she had that curious expression that had captivated him from day one. She's special. Yes, Maria smiled. That's why everything is worth it. When David was getting ready to leave, Maria walked him to the door. David, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you really come here? Don't tell me it's just for the food. David put on his coat, thinking about the answer. Because my grandmother used to say that family isn't just blood. It's the people who see you when you're broken and decide to stay. You see me, Maria. It's been a long time since anyone truly saw me. Maria gently touched his arm. We also need to be seen, David. Thank you for doing that. As he walked home, David thought about Maria's words. He wasn't the only one who was lonely. They also needed family. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could be the family they all needed. How does David's revelation about his company challenge Maria's perception of him? What is the significance of Maria's murals and how they reflect her values and dreams? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Art of the Heart. Mommy, why are you crying? Sophia found Maria sitting on the studio floor, surrounded by papers. Maria quickly wiped her eyes. I'm not crying, my love. I just have something in my eye. But Sophia had already seen the landlord's letter. Although she couldn't read all the words, she understood the numbers. $3,000 more each month. It was a lot of money, even for a 7-year-old. Are we going to have to leave? Maria hugged her daughter. I don't know, sweetie. We'll find a solution. That night, during their Tuesday dinner, Maria barely touched her food. David noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way she bit her lip. "Are you okay?" "Yes, just tired." But when Sophia went to take a bath, Maria couldn't pretend anymore. "The landlord raised the rent. A lot." "How much?" $3,000 more a month. He says the neighborhood is improving, that he can get more money. David felt angry. He knew landlords like that. He had fought against them when he was a kid in Queens. "What are you going to do?" "Look for another place, but all the studios are super expensive now." Maria rubbed her temples. "Maybe I'll have to stop painting for a while. Get more cleaning jobs." "No." Maria looked at him, surprised. "No what?" "You can't stop painting. Your art is too important." "David, art doesn't pay the rent." Maria got up and started cleaning the dishes with jerky movements. "The world doesn't work that way. People like me don't get into big galleries. We paint murals and clean offices. How about I help you?" Maria froze. "How?" "I can lend you the money. No interest. Pay when you can." Maria turned to him, her eyes burning with anger. "No! David, let me help." "I said no." Her voice rose. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity, it's—" "What? Charity? Your good deed for the day?" David stood up. "It's friendship. It's affection. It's money I can't pay back." Maria threw the rag into the sink. "I'm not your project, David." Sophia appeared at the door in her pajamas. "Why are you shouting?" Maria took a deep breath. "We're not shouting, my love. David's leaving now." David looked at Sophia, then at Maria. He had ruined everything. "Maria, I didn't mean to." "Good night, David." David left the apartment feeling worse than ever. He had wanted to help, and he had only made things worse. For the next 2 weeks, David didn't come to dinner. Maria hadn't invited him, and he didn't dare to come uninvited. But he couldn't stop thinking about them. One Friday afternoon, walking through the city, David saw something that made him stop. It was a mural under construction on the side of an office building, and he recognized the style immediately. It was Maria's work. He approached the construction site. Maria was on a scaffolding, painting a scene of families from different countries arriving in New York. The work was more ambitious than anything he had seen from her before. "Hey!" a man with a hard hat shouted. "You can't be here." "Who commissioned this mural?" David asked. "Greenwich Art Consulting." "Why?" David knew that company. He had used them before to decorate his company's offices. He took out his phone and made a call. "Hi, Jane. It's David Miller." "Yes, from TechSolve." "Hey, I saw you hired Maria Vance for a mural. Can you get me her contact information?" 20 minutes later, David had the information he needed. Greenwich Art Consulting had hired Maria on the recommendation of an anonymous client who saw her work and was impressed. David smiled for the first time in weeks. That night, he went to Maria's apartment. Sophia opened the door. "David!" She hugged his neck. "You haven't been here. Mommy says you're busy, but I think you're fighting." "Sophia, let him in." Maria appeared behind her, with fresh paint stains on her clothes. "Hi," David said. They stood awkwardly until Sophia pushed them towards the living room. "Sit down. I'm going to make you like the grown-up ladies." When they were alone, Maria spoke first. "I'm sorry I yelled." "No, I'm sorry I offended you. I didn't want you to think it was pity." "I know." Maria sat on the sofa. "But it's hard. All my life I've depended on myself. When I depended on someone else, he abandoned me. You're not him, I know. But it's scary." David sat beside her. "How did you get the big mural job?" Maria smiled. "Someone recommended my work. Greenwich Art Consulting called me out of the blue. It's the biggest job I've ever had." "Do you know who recommended you?" "No. They said it was a client who preferred to remain anonymous." David nodded, trying not to smile. "How lucky." "Yes. With that money, I can pay the new rent for 6 months. It gives me time to get more jobs." Sophia returned with 3 cups of warm water with tea bags floating in them. Fancy tea. Thank you, chef, David said, taking a sip of the warm water. David? Sophia said. Are you still fighting? David looked at Maria. Are we fighting? No, Maria smiled. Not anymore. Good. Sophia snuggled between them. Because tomorrow's my birthday, and I want both of you here. Tomorrow's your birthday? David straightened up. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't coming, Sophia said simply. But now you are, Maria laughed. Sophia, you can't force David to come to your party. Am I forced? David asked. Yes, Sophia said. It's a rule. Friends go to birthdays. Well, then I guess I have no choice. That night, as David prepared to leave, Maria walked him to the door. David, can I ask you something? Of course. Has your company used Greenwich Art Consulting before? David maintained a neutral expression. Perhaps. We use many art companies. Maria studied him. Were you the anonymous client? Maria, was it you? David sighed. Yeah. Maria closed her eyes. Why can't you just be honest with me? Because I knew you'd say no. And your work is too good for no one to see it. But why lie? Because I wanted it to be your triumph. It doesn't help me. Maria was silent for a moment. You know what bothers me most? What? That it worked. That I'm proud of that work. And now I don't know if I should be. You should be. I just made a recommendation. You did all the work. Maria opened the door. Good night, David. Are you still invited to the birthday? Maria smiled despite everything. Sophia would kill me if you didn't come. Then I'll be there. As he walked home, David wondered why it was so hard to help the people he loved. Because he could no longer deny it. He loved Maria. He loved Sophia. He loved the family they had begun to build together. Now he just had to find a way not to ruin it. What is the significance of Maria's initial strong reaction to David's offer of money, and how does it reflect her past experiences? How does David's anonymous client gesture reveal his true intentions and his evolving understanding of support? Share your insights in the comments. Coming home. A family forged in love. The phone rang during Sophia's birthday party. David had arrived with a gift wrapped in shiny paper and a smile that tried to hide his nervousness after the conversation with Maria about the mural. David! Sophia ran to him. Look at my cake. Mommy painted a mermaid on top. The cake was a work of art. Maria had used natural dyes to create a mermaid with a sparkling green tail surrounded by colorful fish. It's the most beautiful cake I've ever seen, David said sincerely. Open it! Open it! Sophia pointed to the gift. Inside was a box of professional paints and a small easel. So you can paint like Mommy! Sophia's eyes filled with tears of joy. She hugged David so hard she almost knocked him over. It was then that David's phone rang. He looked at the screen and froze. It was his assistant, Julia. Sorry, I have to answer, he apologized, stepping into the hallway. Julia, what's wrong? David, I'm sorry to bother you, but it's urgent. Your father is in the hospital in San Salvador. He had a heart attack. The world stopped. David leaned against the wall. How is he? Stable, but the doctors say you need to go soon. I have your flight ready for tomorrow morning. David hung up and stood in the hallway. His father, the man who had abandoned them when David was 12. The man he had hated for 20 years. The man from whom he had inherited his eyes and stubbornness, and the ability to hurt the people he loved. David, Maria appeared in the hallway. Are you okay? My dad, he's in the hospital. Maria put her hand on his arm. What do you need? It was a simple question, but David realized no one had asked him that in years. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him in 20 years. Do you want to talk about it? David looked towards the living room, where Sophia was still admiring her new paints. I don't want to ruin the party. Ruin. Come here, Maria called her daughter. David has to leave. Why, he just got here. It's a family emergency, my love. Sophia ran to David and hugged him. Are you going to be okay? The question, asked with the seriousness that only children possess, almost broke David. Yes, Capota, I'm going to be okay. Are you coming back? David looked at Maria over Sophia's head. Yes, I'm coming back. That night, Maria came to David's apartment. He had given her his address only in case of emergency, never thinking she would use it. How did you know which building it was? He asked as he opened the door. I asked the doorman if he knew David Miller. Maria entered the apartment and fell silent. It was huge, modern, cold, everything opposite to her small, warm home. Wow, yes, impressive, isn't it? David sounded bitter. And completely empty. Maria walked through the living room, touching the expensive furniture that no one had obviously ever used. When was the last time you saw your dad? David poured himself a whiskey. He didn't feel like drinking. The day I turned 12. He came to my party drunk. My mom kicked him out. That was the last time. And after that? After that, nothing. He went to El Salvador. My mom worked 3 jobs to support me. She died when I was 25, still working to pay off my student loans. Maria sat on the sofa. Does he know she died? I don't know. I never tried to contact him. And now? David joined her on the sofa. Now he's dying, and I don't know what to feel. Am I supposed to be sad, angry, relieved? You're supposed to feel what you feel. David put his head in his hands. Maria, what if I'm like him? What if I hurt the people I love? Maria took his hands. How do you feel when you're with us? Like I'm the best version of myself. Then you're not like him. Men like him don't care about hurting others. But I've already hurt you. With the mural, with the money. You hurt me because you care about me. He hurt them because he only cared about himself. It's different. David flew to San Salvador the next day. It was his first time in his family's country since he was a child. The airport smelled of coffee and impending rain. Everything felt familiar and strange at the same time. His father was in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, but awake. 20 years had turned the strong man David remembered into someone small and fragile. David, his voice was barely a whisper. You came? I don't know why. David stood by the door. I do, because you're a better man than me. For 3 days, father and son talked. His father told him about years of alcoholism, about the depression he didn't know how to treat, about the nights he thought about calling, but was too afraid of rejection. It's not an excuse, he said. It's just the truth. Why now? David asked. Why did you wait until you were dying? Because I thought you were better off without me. Julia sent me articles about your company. You're succeeding. I thought you didn't need me anymore. It's never about need. David sat in the chair by the bed. It's about wanting, about choosing to be in someone's life. His father closed his eyes. Choose to be in mine these last few days, please. David stayed a week. He met aunts and cousins he had never known. He ate pupusas at the market where his grandmother had worked. He visited his great-grandmother's grave and told her about his life in New York. On the last day, his father gave him a small box. It was your great-grandmother's. She wanted you to have it. Inside was a silver ring with a small green stone. She always said it was for the day you found someone who loved you for who you are, not for what you have. David thought of Maria, of Sophia, of the family he had found when he least expected it. Dad? Yes, I forgive you. His father wept then, and David did too. When David returned to New York, he went straight to Maria's apartment. It was 11 o'clock at night, but the studio light was still on. He knocked softly. Maria opened with paint on her cheeks and surprise in her eyes. You're back. I told you I would be. They stood looking at each other until Sophia shouted from upstairs. Is that David? Mommy, ask him if he wants dinner. Maria laughed. Do you want dinner? Always, David said. I always want to have dinner with you. As they went upstairs, David touched the ring in his pocket. It wasn't time yet. But he was no longer afraid of love. He was no longer afraid of being like his father, because he had learned the difference between abandoning and choosing to stay. And he chose to stay. How does David's reunion with his estranged father impact his understanding of family and forgiveness? What is the significance of the great-grandmother's ring, and what does it symbolize for David's future with Maria? Share your insights in the comments. New beginnings. A full circle. 2 months after David's return from El Salvador, things had changed. Maria had finished the corporate mural and received 3 more job offers. David had begun to delegate more responsibilities at his company, dedicating time to projects that truly mattered to him. But they still hadn't talked about what was growing between them. David? Sophia found him in the studio, looking at Maria's new paintings. Do you like my mommy? David almost choked on his coffee. Why do you ask that, Chipota? Because you look at her like my grandma used to look at my grandpa in pictures, and because mommy gets happy when you come. David knelt to Sophia's level. And what do you think about that? I think it would be nice to have a daddy who doesn't leave. David's heart tightened. Sophia had spent her whole life watching her mother struggle alone. The idea of security for her was revolutionary. Sophia, if I liked your mommy, would you be okay with that? Would you still teach me Salvadoran Spanish? Always. And would you still come to dinner even if it's not Tuesday? Every day they let me. Then it's okay. Sophia shrugged. But you have to tell her. Mommy's kind of silly about those things. That night, David arrived at the apartment with a different proposal. How about we go out for dinner? All 3 of us. To a real restaurant. Maria raised an eyebrow. Like a date? Like whatever you want it to be. They went to a Salvadoran restaurant in Queens. Sophia was fascinated with the pupusas and curtido. David ordered in perfect Spanish, surprising Maria with how easily he connected with his roots when he allowed himself to. My grandmother used to bring me here when I was a kid, David explained. It was the only place where I felt completely Salvadoran. And now? Maria asked. How do you feel now? David looked around the restaurant, at the families dining together, at Sophia laughing as she tried to pronounce pupusa correctly. Like home. After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood where David had grown up. He showed her the building where he had lived with his mother and grandmother, the store where they bought groceries, the park where he played soccer. It was so different then, he said. Poorer, but also more real. Do you miss that life? I miss belonging to something bigger than myself. Maria stopped. And now? What do you belong to now? David looked into her eyes. To you, if you'll let me. Maria didn't respond immediately. Sophia had run ahead to see a dog, giving them a moment of privacy. David, I'm scared. Me too. What are you scared of? You have everything. Money, success, independence. I'm afraid of not being enough, of one day you realizing you deserve something better. Maria laughed softly. Better than what? Better than a man who teaches my daughter Spanish? Better than someone who sees my art and thinks it's worth something? Better than the first person who has made me feel less alone in 5 years? Maria? No, let me finish. She took his hands. I'm scared because the last time I trusted someone, he abandoned me. But with you, I want to be brave. David kissed her then, softly, in the middle of the Queen's sidewalk, while Sophia made ew noises from where she was playing with the dog. 6 months later, David had made significant changes in his life. He had promoted his vice president to interim CEO, keeping only a consultant role for himself. With his newfound free time, he had started working with Maria on something that excited both of them, a non-profit organization for immigrant artists. It's not charity, he explained to Maria for the 10th time as they reviewed legal documents. It's an investment. These artists bring culture, perspectives, stories that America needs to see. I know, Maria smiled. I just like hearing you say it. The organization started small. A space where artists could work, take business English classes, and connect with potential clients. Maria became the artistic director. David managed the business side. You know what's the strangest thing? Maria said one afternoon, as they watched a group of Guatemalan artists prepare an exhibition. For the first time in my life, I feel that my work matters not just for me. It's always mattered. David hugged her from behind. It's just that now more people can see it. Success came gradually. First, small sales, then larger commissions. Soon, they had a waiting list to enter the program. Maria began receiving invitations to speak at conferences about art and immigration. They invited me to a conference in Miami, she told David one night. They want me to talk about art as a cultural bridge. That's incredible. Are you going to go? Are you coming with me, as your boyfriend or as your business partner? Maria laughed. Can't it be both? It was October when everything came together in the most unexpected way. Maria had been invited to an exhibition at an important gallery in Manhattan. It was her first solo exhibition at a prestigious gallery. On opening night, David was more nervous than Maria. What if no one comes? He asked as he got dressed. Will they come? Sophia, now 8 years old, was helping her mother with her makeup. I invited my whole class. You invited your class? Maria turned around. Yes. The teacher says it's educational. They're coming as a field trip. David laughed. Your daughter is going to fill the gallery with second graders. There's no better audience, Maria said. Kids don't lie about art. The gallery filled up. David's professional contacts came. Maria's artist friends. Families from the Immigrant Artists program. And, indeed, Sophia's entire class with their parents. David watched Maria talk to visitors about her paintings. She looked so confident, so in her element. She was the woman she had always been destined to be. You know which painting is my favorite? Sophia appeared by his side. Which one? The one you painted of the three of us. David followed her gaze to a corner where a painting he hadn't seen before hung. It was a portrait of the three of them having dinner at the small apartment table. Sophia laughed as David taught her something from a book. Maria looked at them with an expression of pure love. When did she paint that? 2 weeks ago. She said she wanted to paint the moment she knew we were a family. David felt something tighten in his throat. He touched his great-grandmother's ring in his pocket, the one he had been carrying for months, waiting for the perfect moment. Maybe there was no perfect moment. Maybe there were only true moments. When the gallery began to empty, David asked for everyone's attention. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to say something. Maria looked at him with curiosity from across the room. A year ago, I was a man who had everything and had nothing. Then a little girl invited me to dinner, and her mother taught me what it truly means to have a family. Sophia approached and took his hand. Maria Vance. David knelt in the middle of the gallery, taking out his great-grandmother's silver ring. Will you be my wife? Will you be my official family? Maria covered her mouth with her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And me? Sophia shouted. Are you proposing to me too? David laughed. Sophia Vance, will you be my daughter? Will we be family forever? Yes! Sophia jumped towards him. But only if Mommy says yes! Everyone in the gallery looked at Maria. She walked slowly towards where David was still kneeling with Sophia in his arms. Are you sure? She whispered. Are you sure you want both of us? I'm sure I need you. I'm sure that without you, I'm not who I want to be. Then yes. Maria knelt to their level. Yes, I want to be your wife. Yes, I want us to be a family. David put the ring on her finger and kissed his future wife, while Sophia hugged them both, and the entire gallery applauded. What is the significance of Maria's mural of the three of them, and her comment about painting the moment she knew we were a family. How does David's public proposal, involving both Maria and Sophia, reflect his transformation and his commitment to his new family? Share your insights in the comments. The circle complete, a legacy of love and art. It was April when they married in Central Park, exactly in the spot where Sophia had first invited him to dinner. The same bench was decorated with Salvadoran and Mexican flowers. David's father had flown from El Salvador, still weak, but determined not to miss his son's wedding. Maria's family arrived from Mexico City. Sophia was the maid of honor and carried the rings with ceremonial seriousness. "You know what the best thing about all this is?" Sophia whispered to David as they waited for the ceremony to begin. "What, Kipota? That now when people ask me where my daddy is, I'm going to be able to say he's home waiting for me." David had to take a deep breath to keep from crying. The ceremony was in Spanish and English, celebrating all the cultures that had shaped them. When the judge declared them husband and wife, Sophia shouted, "Now we're a real family!" as if they hadn't been since they first sat down to dinner at that small table, sharing tamales and stories and the kind of love that isn't planned, but is always found. 3 years after the wedding, David woke up on the same date that had changed his life forever, February 14th. But this time, he didn't wake up alone in a cold apartment. This time, he woke up in a house full of life in Brooklyn, with Sophia jumping on the bed. "Daddy, Mommy, wake up! It's the special day!" Sophia was now 11 years old and had started calling David Dad, naturally, after the legal adoption they had completed 6 months prior. Every time he heard her say it, David felt as if his heart would explode with happiness. "What special day?" Maria asked from her side of the bed, pretending to be asleep. "The day you met, the day I became the smartest Cupid in the world." David laughed. Sophia had completely taken credit for bringing them together, and honestly, she deserved it. "Cupid, huh?" David reached for her and tickled her. "Since when do you know so much about love?" "Always." Sophia wriggled free, laughing. "I'm an expert. That's why I know today is perfect to give you my news." Maria sat up. "What news?" Sophia became serious, as she did when she had something important to say. "My teacher says I can get into the special art program next year. It's for kids who want to be artists like Mommy." Maria sat up completely. "Sophia, that's incredible. Since when have you been applying to those programs?" "David helped me with the application." Sophia looked at her dad. "But it was my idea. I want to paint stories like you two." David felt that familiar sensation of pride and love that only Sophia could evoke. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "Yes, but I don't just want to paint. I want to help other families like ours. Families who find each other when they least expect it." Maria hugged her daughter. "You know what? I think you're the wisest person I know." During breakfast, David checked his phone and smiled. "I have news too." "What?" "We have the opportunity to receive the largest donation in our history. We can expand to 5 more community centers." Maria dropped her fork. "Seriously?" "Seriously. And there's more. A university in California wants to study our model to create similar programs across the country." "Does that mean we're famous?" Sophia asked. "Does it mean your mom is famous?" David took Maria's hand. "Does it mean that her work is changing lives in places we don't even know?" Maria had tears in her eyes. "I can't believe it. 4 years ago I was cleaning offices to pay the rent, and now you're teaching the whole country about the power of art." David kissed her, "Just as you always knew you could do." That afternoon, they went to the place where it all began, the bench in Central Park. It now had a small plaque that read, "Where families meet," in Spanish and English. It was a tradition they had started. Every February 14th, they returned to the exact spot where Sophia had made her first invitation. But this time, they weren't alone. 3 other families were there too, families who had adopted the tradition after hearing their story. "Look!" Sophia pointed to a young couple with a small child. "They're the Garcias. They met in our art program." Indeed, Maria Garcia, an artist from Honduras, was sitting on the bench with her American husband and their 3-year-old son. They had met when he visited an exhibition by the Immigrant Artists Program. "It's like we're starting something bigger," Maria murmured. "You know what I think? Like when someone yawns and you yawn too, but better." David laughed. "Love is contagious?" "Yes. You loved each other, and that made other people want to love each other too, and now there are more happy families." Maria looked at her daughter in astonishment. "How did you get so wise?" "Artist genes," Sophia shrugged. "And lots of practice, seeing how you two solve problems with love instead of anger." As they walked back home, David thought about all the ways his life had changed. His company was still successful, but now it had a bigger purpose. Maria no longer struggled to pay the rent. Her murals were in museums, and her paintings sold in important galleries. Sophia grew up secure, loved, with 2 parents who supported her in everything. But the most important thing was this: he no longer felt alone. He no longer woke up wondering what the point of it all was. He had a family that he had chosen, and that had chosen him. That night, after Sophia fell asleep, David and Maria sat in their home studio. Maria was working on a new series of paintings about families formed by choice, not by blood. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "Always. Do you ever regret letting Sophia invite me that first night?" Maria put down her paintbrush and turned to him. "Do you regret saying yes?" "Never. Not for a second." "Then you have your answer." Maria moved closer and sat on his lap. "David, that night you didn't just change our lives. You saved us, and we saved you." "Do you think Sophia knew what she was doing?" "I think children see things that adults can't. They see lonely hearts and think, I can fix that." David kissed her. "I love you. I love you too, and I love the family we built. And I love that every day we can help other families find each other." From upstairs came Sophia's voice. "Daddy, Mommy, stop kissing and come say goodnight." They laughed and went upstairs together. Sophia was in bed with one of her new drawings, the family of 3 sitting around their original small table, but now in the new, bigger house with room for guests. "You know what I'm going to do when I grow up?" Sophia said, as David tucked her in. "What, Shipota?" "I'm going to paint murals that help lonely people find families, like you two." Maria stroked her hair. "And how are you going to do that?" "I'm going to paint stories of families who chose each other, so people see that there are many ways to make a family." David felt his heart swell with pride. "You're incredible. You know that?" "Yes," Sophia said, without modesty. "I know, but you two are incredible too. We're an incredible family." And as they turned off the lights and went to sleep, David thought about how right Sophia was. They were incredible. Not perfect, but incredible. They were a family that had started with a simple question from a brave little girl. "Will you have dinner with us?" And that question had created something beautiful, something lasting, something that continued to grow and touch other lives. Love really was contagious, and they were living proof that the best families aren't always born. Sometimes they're found on park benches on February nights, when a little girl sees a lonely man and decides that no one should ever eat alone. Epilogue. 5 years later. 5 years had passed since the wedding in Central Park. David woke up on a Saturday morning in spring to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. He stretched in bed and smiled as he heard the familiar voices. Maria explaining something about mixing colors, Sophia asking questions, and a new voice. He got up and went downstairs to find a scene that filled him with joy. Maria, now 32, was in the kitchen teaching Sophia, who had grown into a 16-year-old teenager with the same curious spirit, but now her mother's height. And at the high table, sitting in his special chair, was Leo, their 3-year-old son, concentrating on his own art project, which consisted mainly of eating more paint than he used. "Daddy!" Leo held up his hands, covered in blue paint. "Look, I'm blue." "I see that, champ." David picked him up, not caring that his shirt got stained. "Are you helping Mommy and Sophia?" "I'm making very important art," Leo said, with the seriousness that only 3-year-olds possess. Sophia laughed. "His very important art is a house with 6 chimneys and a giant dog." "It's a house for big families," Leo explained, "like ours." Maria approached and kissed David. "Good morning, sleepyhead." Leo woke up at 6 wanting to paint. Sophia offered to help. "And you? How long have you been awake?" "Since 5. I finished the proposal for the program in Texas." David looked at his wife with renewed admiration. In the last 5 years, Maria had become a national figure in the world of community art. Her Immigrant Artists program now operated in 12 different cities. She had written a book about art as a tool for cultural integration. She had spoken at international conferences. But what impressed him most was how she had achieved all that without ever losing sight of what truly mattered: her family. "And, do you think they'll approve it?" "I hope so. It would be our first program in the South. There's a lot of work to do there." Sophia looked up from her painting. "Does that mean we're moving?" "No, my love." Maria sat beside her. "It means I'll travel more, but this is our home." "Good," Sophia said, "because I already told all my friends in the art program that my family started all this. I can't leave now." David smiled. Sophia had been accepted into one of the most prestigious art programs in the city. At 16, she already had a partial scholarship to study art at any university she chose. But more importantly, she had inherited her parents' passion for using art to connect communities. "Speaking of friends," David said, "are you still sure you want to have the party here next week?" The following week marked the 10th anniversary of the Immigrant Artists program. They had planned a celebration at the house for all the families who had passed through the program over the years. Of course, Maria didn't hesitate. This house was built to celebrate families. What better way to use it? It was true. 2 years ago, they had sold the small apartment and bought a house in Brooklyn with a large yard and a spacious studio for Maria. But they had specifically chosen a house with a large kitchen and an open living room, designed to host people. David's phone rang. It was Julia, who after all these years was still his assistant, though now she mainly managed his philanthropic projects. "Good morning, Julia." "Good morning, David. I have news about the documentary proposal." David straightened up. A production company had proposed making a documentary about families formed by immigration and love, using their story as a guiding thread. "And? They love the project. They want to start filming next month, but they have one condition." "What?" "They want Sophia to be co-director of the project. They say they need the perspective of someone who lived the story since childhood." David looked at Sophia, who was helping Leo clean his hands. "Julia, can I talk to you for a moment?" He moved away from the family towards the living room. "Are you sure that's a good idea? Sophia is barely 16. David, you've seen the videos she makes for the program. She has a natural eye for storytelling. And honestly, no one knows better than her how art and love can change lives." David considered this. Sophia had started making short videos about the families in the program when she was 14. What had started as a school project had become a viral series that showed real stories of immigration, art, and family. And school? It would be part of her independent study credit. Her teachers have already approved it. Let me talk to Maria and Sophia. I'll call you back." When he returned to the kitchen, Maria looked at him with curiosity. "Everything all right? Sophia, can you come here for a moment?" He explained the documentary proposal. Sophia's eyes widened as he spoke. "They want me to help direct? Seriously?" "Seriously. But it's a big decision. It would be a lot of work and a lot of responsibility." Sophia looked at Maria. "Mommy, what do you think?" Maria approached and put her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "I think you're 16 years old, and you're already changing lives with your videos. I think if anyone can tell this story correctly, it's you. But I also think it's your decision." Sophia was silent for a moment, looking at Leo, who was still happily painting. "Can I ask something?" "Of course, Chipota." "Will the documentary help more families like ours find each other?" David nodded. "That's the goal." "Then yes, I want to do it. But with one condition." "What?" "I want the last scene to be on Valentine's Day, on the bench where it all started. I want to show how many families go there now." Maria wiped her eyes. "You know what? I think you're still the wisest person I know." That afternoon, while Leo took his nap and Sophia worked on her projects, David and Maria sat in the backyard. Maria was painting, and David was checking work emails. "Can you believe it's been 10 years already?" Maria asked. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like I've lived a whole lifetime since then." "Both are true." David closed his laptop and looked at his wife. At 32, Maria was more beautiful than ever. She had a few gray hairs mixed in her brown hair and small lines around her eyes that came from years of laughing. But she still had the same passion, the same strength, the same ability to see beauty where others only saw problems. "Do you remember when you thought you couldn't pay the studio rent?" Maria laughed. "Do you remember when you thought money was all you had? How wrong we were." "About what?" "About everything. I thought I needed more money to be happy. You thought you needed fewer problems to be happy. But it turns out we just needed the right kind of family." Maria put her paintbrush in the water and moved closer to David. "You know what I like most about our story?" "What?" "That it didn't end with the wedding. That it kept growing. Leo, the expanding program, Sophia finding her own voice. Our story keeps being written. And what do you think comes next?" Maria smiled. "I don't know, but I know we'll discover it together." From inside came the sound of Leo waking from his nap, followed by Sophia's voice, singing him a song in Spanish. "Time to go back to the real world," Maria said. "This is the real world." David took her hand. "This is the most real thing I've ever had." As they entered the house together, David thought about all the decisions that had brought them here. Sophia's decision to speak to a lonely stranger. Maria's decision to trust and love again. His own decision to be brave and stay instead of running away. Each decision had led to another, creating a chain of love that now extended far beyond their small family. The program's families, the communities they had touched, the lives they had changed. It had all started with a simple question from a 7-year-old girl, and as he helped Maria prepare dinner and listened to Sophia teach Leo new words, David realized that Sophia's question still resonated. "Will you have dinner with us?" Because in the end, that was all any family truly offered. A place at the table, a place to belong, a place where love was served along with the food, where stories were shared along with dreams, where no one had to be alone ever again. And David, who had once been the loneliest man in New York, now knew he would never dine alone again. His family had made sure of that. Epilogue. 5 years later. 5 years had passed since the wedding in Central Park. David woke up on a Saturday morning in spring to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. He stretched in bed and smiled as he heard the familiar voices. Maria explaining something about mixing colors, Sophia asking questions, and a new voice. He got up and went downstairs to find a scene that filled him with joy. Maria, now 32, was in the kitchen teaching Sophia, who had grown into a 16-year-old teenager with the same curious spirit, but now her mother's height. And at the high table, sitting in his special chair, was Leo, their 3-year-old son, concentrating on his own art project, which consisted primarily of eating more paint than he used. "Daddy!" Leo held up his hands, covered in blue paint. "Look, I'm blue." "I see that, champ." David picked him up, not caring that his shirt got stained. "Are you helping Mommy and Sophia?" "I'm making very important art," Leo said, with the seriousness that only 3-year-olds possess. Sophia laughed. "His very important art is a house with 6 chimneys and a giant dog." "It's a house for big families," Leo explained, "like ours." Maria approached and kissed David. "Good morning, sleepyhead." Leo woke up at 6 wanting to paint. Sophia offered to help. "And you? How long have you been awake?" "Since 5. I finished the proposal for the program in Texas." David looked at his wife with renewed admiration. In the last 5 years, Maria had become a national figure in the world of community art. Her Immigrant Artists program now operated in 12 different cities. She had written a book about art as a tool for cultural integration. She had spoken at international conferences. But what impressed him most was how she had achieved all that without ever losing sight of what truly mattered: her family. "And? Do you think they'll approve it?" "I hope so. It would be our first program in the South. There's a lot of work to do there." Sophia looked up from her painting. "Does that mean we're moving?" "No, my love." Maria sat beside her. "It means I'll travel more, but this is our home." "Good," Sophia said, "because I already told all my friends in the art program that my family started all this. I can't leave now." David smiled. Sophia had been accepted into one of the most prestigious art programs in the city. At 16, she already had a partial scholarship to study art at any university she chose. But more importantly, she had inherited her parents' passion for using art to connect communities. "Speaking of friends," David said, "are you still sure you want to have the party here next week?" The following week marked the 10th anniversary of the Immigrant Artists program. They had planned a celebration at the house for all the families who had passed through the program over the years. Of course, Maria didn't hesitate. This house was built to celebrate families. What better way to use it? It was true. 2 years ago, they had sold the small apartment and bought a house in Brooklyn, with a large yard and a spacious studio for Maria. But they had specifically chosen a house with a large kitchen and an open living room, designed to host people. David's phone rang. It was Julia, who after all these years was still his assistant, though now she mainly managed his philanthropic projects. "Good morning, Julia." "Good morning, David. I have news about the documentary proposal." David straightened up. A production company had proposed making a documentary about families formed by immigration and love, using their story as a guiding thread. "And?" "They love the project. They want to start filming next month, but they have one condition." "What?" "They want Sophia to be co-director of the project. They say they need the perspective of someone who lived the story since childhood." David looked at Sophia, who was helping Leo clean his hands. "Julia, can I talk to you for a moment?" He moved away from the family towards the living room. "Are you sure that's a good idea? Sophia is barely 16. David, you've seen the videos she makes for the program. She has a natural eye for storytelling. And honestly, no one knows better than her how art and love can change lives." David considered this. Sophia had started making short videos about the families in the program when she was 14. What had started as a school project had become a viral series that showed real stories of immigration, art, and family. And school? It would be part of her independent study credit. Her teachers have already approved it. Let me talk to Maria and Sophia. I'll call you back. When he returned to the kitchen, Maria looked at him with curiosity. Everything all right? Sophia, can you come here for a moment? He explained the documentary proposal. Sophia's eyes widened as he spoke. They want me to help direct? Seriously? Seriously. But it's a big decision. It would be a lot of work and a lot of responsibility. Sophia looked at Maria. Mommy, what do you think? Maria approached and put her hands on her daughter's shoulders. I think you're 16 years old, and you're already changing lives with your videos. I think if anyone can tell this story correctly, it's you. But I also think it's your decision. Sophia was silent for a moment, looking at Leo, who was still happily painting. Can I ask something? Of course, Capota. Will the documentary help more families like ours find each other? David nodded. That's the goal. Then yes, I want to do it, but with one condition. What? I want the last scene to be on Valentine's Day, on the bench where it all started. I want to show how many families go there now. Maria wiped her eyes. You know what? I think you're still the wisest person I know. That afternoon, while Leo took his nap and Sophia worked on her projects, David and Maria sat in the backyard. Maria was painting, and David was checking work emails. Can you believe it's been 10 years already? Maria asked. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like I've lived a whole lifetime since then. Both are true. David closed his laptop and looked at his wife. At 32, Maria was more beautiful than ever. She had a few gray hairs mixed in her brown hair and small lines around her eyes that came from years of laughing. But she still had the same passion, the same strength, the same ability to see beauty where others only saw problems. Do you remember when you thought you couldn't pay the studio rent? Maria laughed. Do you remember when you thought money was all you had? How wrong we were. About what? About everything. I thought I needed more money to be happy. You thought you needed fewer problems to be happy, but it turns out we just needed the right kind of family. Maria put her paintbrush in the water and moved closer to David. You know what I like most about our story? What? That it didn't end with the wedding, that it kept growing. Leo, the expanding program, Sophia finding her own voice. Our story keeps being written. And what do you think comes next? Maria smiled. I don't know, but I know we'll discover it together. From inside came the sound of Leo waking from his nap, followed by Sophia's voice, singing him a song in Spanish. Time to go back to the real world, Maria said. This is the real world. David took her hand. This is the most real thing I've ever had. As they entered the house together, David thought about all the decisions that had brought them here. Sophia's decision to speak to a lonely stranger, Maria's decision to trust in love again, his own decision to be brave and stay instead of running away. Each decision had led to another, creating a chain of love that now extended far beyond their small family. The program's families, the communities they had touched, the lives they had changed. It had all started with a simple question from a 7-year-old girl, and as he helped Maria prepare dinner and listened to Sophia teach Leo new words, David realized that Sophia's question still resonated. Will you have dinner with us? Because in the end, that was all any family truly offered. A place at the table, a place to belong, a place where love was served along with the food, where stories were shared along with dreams, where no one had to be alone ever again. And David, who had once been the loneliest man in New York, now knew he would never dine alone again. His family had made sure of that.